Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Unusually Horrid, and welcome back to my channel. As you can see, we are now in our spooky setup. I thought, well, I really need a root touch-up, so why not sit down and chill with you guys and do a root touch-up? I thought it would be really funny and maybe really cringy if I, as a spooky treat for you guys, went through my old Reddit account back before... Not really back before Unusually Horrid. It was at the same time. I just, for whatever reason, had two different usernames. So I wrote the same stories, and Unusually Horrid was strictly Tumblr, which is definitely where I hung out. Like, Tumblr was my home. Oh god, that's so cringy. I know I'm not alone, though. It's fine. Anyway, so Unusually Horrid was TikTok. No. Well, yes, but also no. Unusually Horrid was Tumblr, and then... I think I just actually just used my name, so like my first name and my middle name as my Reddit account, which like bruh, which that Reddit account has since been suspended because I think it got hacked or something. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure everything that I wrote is still up. But either way, if I can't find them on Reddit, I can go back to my Tumblr. But I thought it would be really funny for while I'm processing to sit down and read you guys my old creepypastas from like 2011 to like maybe 2013. I feel like I didn't write them there for very long. But we can see what I have. They're probably super cringy, but we'll see what kind of like crazy machinations my brain was writing whenever I was 18 while I sit and do my hair. I'm going to snap my fingers, and when I do, I will return with hair color on my head and Reddit stories available. Okay, so now we're in our spookier lighting. Let me just preface by saying I was 18. I had never taken a creative writing class in my life. This all just came from my brain goo and from me staying up way too late every night on Reddit no sleep. So, without further ado, I found them on my old Tumblr. I couldn't find my old Reddit page. It must have gotten deleted or something after it was suspended. But all of these stories I did post to no sleep at one point in my life. Okay, so no lies, nothing here. So I'm literally getting sat down to edit this video. And I open my computer. Well, not even my computer. It's my husband's computer. And for whatever reason, a Reddit page is open. And it's literally open to my old account. Like, why is it signed in? Anyway, so I found my old account, so I have access to more creepypastas. So there might just be more. So without further ado, let's dive into the cringe, shall we? And maybe... I don't know, maybe these still stand, but they probably don't. They're probably super cringy, so let's jump into it. This one I liked a lot better. This is still one of my favorite personal, unusually horrid stories. It's called Unholy Illumination. This was actually based off of a dream that I had. Okay, the night air was warmer than usual. The wind was light on the grass in the field. The night air was warmer than usual. The wind was light on the grass in the field. I can't even read my own writing. That's how bad my grammar was. The night air was warmer than usual. The wind was light on the grass in the field I was standing in. The street light in front of me was glowing blue. The feeling of dread was overwhelming and suffocating. I didn't know how I got there, but I knew where I was. I turned around to see if my parents' or grandparents' cars were in the driveway. They were there. And that made me feel safe. Then something strange happened that brought back the horrid dread. I heard a noise. Nothing unworldly or particular evil, but it wasn't normal to me. It was the horn of a train. There were no train tracks around here, though. Then I looked toward where the noise was coming from, and I saw a one-passenger car from an old red train coming toward the light. As it came under the light, it was illuminated in the most unholy eeriness. The pale blue light from the streetlight made what was inside the train even more horrible. The train was packed with freshly dead bodies. their blue skin pressed up against the windows, their soulless eyes staring into mine. I ran back into the house behind me, but it was too late. I had seen what mortals were not meant to see. I had been marked by death itself. I ran to my bedroom and slowly, very slowly, fell asleep. When I awoke the next morning, I had a train ticket in my hand. God, these are so edgy. Anyway, yeah, that was actually based on a dream I had. So, like, the whole dead bodies and the train car thing is, like, forever singed into, like, my subconscious memory. But, yeah, that was what inspired this story, which I think this one was actually the first story that I put on Unusually Horrid. For real, for real. Anyway, so yeah, that was Unholy Illumination. So the next story that I actually has, like, more than 2 paragraphs on my blog is called Prom Queen. I guess I should start out by saying it really was her fault, and by that I mean she brought it on herself. Lily would walk around the school like she owned the place. People would part for her like in the movies. It made me sick. She was a no-talent brat. She had everything. It wasn't long before my friends and I had made plans to kill her. It started out as a joke, but the more we talked, the more we wanted to kill her. So we decided to go through with it. Our plan was to kill her after prom, follow her back to whatever classy hotel her daddy bought her, and we would check into a room of our own. Then when they least expect it, break into her room and kill her. We had everything prepared in my car. Black ski masks, the rope, duct tape, knife, everything. We would go to the dance, then go to the hotel and change. The night of the dance couldn't get here fast enough. Killing Lily was all we talked about the whole week. It was finally Saturday. My friends and I got ready like everyone else that night. We did our makeup, we booked our hotel room, and we went to the dance. We had a lot of fun. Then they crowned prom king and queen. It was Lily and her boyfriend. I could have thrown up. Of course they would win. The dance finally ended. We went to the hotel and changed. We made one of my friends stay in her dress so she could get into the hotel room by lying to one of the maids by saying she got locked out. It was about 2 a.m. when we headed to her room. We hid while Sarah told the maid how she got locked out of her room. It worked, and we were in. We duct taped Lily and her boyfriend's mouth shut and tied them up. Sarah got changed into her clothes she brought from home. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, whenever I started reading this, I didn't remember how violent this was. I just thought that they burned down the hotel. I forgot that they all, like... Basically, I had the girls Caesar stab Lily and her boyfriend, and yeah, then they lit the hotel on fire. I'm pretty sure I had just seen Scream 4 not that long after this came out, which is where, like, the whole group of friends planning to kill someone else came through. I swear, I promise I wasn't, like, a psychopath planning to kill anybody. I literally don't even remember who was prom queen, and Lily was the name of my sister's cat, so yeah. I used to watch a lot of slasher films back then, too. It's just funny now because I'm, like, so different now than I was in high school. Like, I've gone to a lot of therapy. I've definitely channeled my inner rage through my writing, which probably was like a good, healthy way to do it, you know, by, like, I don't know, not hurting myself, I guess, or other people. I didn't ever want to hurt anybody else, but I was definitely an angry, sad teenager, and it definitely shows in my writing that I was very angry, but it's just funny to look back on this writing and be shocked by how violent I got in my writing, but at the same time, it's not that surprising. All I did back then was watch slasher films, and yeah, this definitely would have been around the time I saw Scream 4, which is the best sequel, the only sequel, in my opinion, for the Scream franchise. But yeah, it's, as a 26-year-old looking back almost 10 years later, I'm like, girl, were you okay? But, like, she wasn't. She's doing much better now, but she wasn't. I guess these aren't as cringy as I thought they were, and more just like, are you okay? The other one I wrote is like a creepy stalker story too that's definitely projecting a little bit on one of my ex-boyfriends, so let's skip that one. Okay, here's a ghost story, I think. Again, I think this one does wind up getting kind of violent at some point, but I feel like at the time and culture for, like, no sleep, you had to... Well, in 2012 in general, time is just today is very different than it used to be, you know? Like, shock culture was prevalent at this time. So if you were trying to post something on Reddit or No Sleep and you weren't making it like a total bloodbath, like, no one was gonna read it. So anyway, this one's called Happy Birthday Alice. I think it's one of the more paranormal and less realistic fiction of my horror, I guess. So I don't think it's as gross or as disturbing as a bunch of teenagers killing another teenager, which in retrospect I'm just like, I wrote that? Like, ooh. I'm like worried for my past self, even though like I know I'm fine. Anyway, so here's Happy Birthday Alice. We moved into the neighborhood about 13 years ago. It seemed like a nice place, an old neighborhood with old houses. The neighbors were nice, mostly old couples in their 70s or so, just a nice, quiet place to live. My husband Mike and I decided to move here after our daughter Alice was born. We wanted her to grow up away from the city, somewhere safe. Everything was perfect up until Alice's 13th birthday. We had a party for her and her girlfriends. We had cake and music. Alice opened up her presents and the girls slept in the basement. Everything was normal, but the nightmare I had that night was terrible and extremely vivid. I was sitting in my living room, but all the furniture was someone else's. Then a girl came into the room. She looked to be around the same age as Alice. Her eyes were very red, like she had been crying. And she had bruises around her mouth and under her right eye. She came over and sat next to me. She did not take notice of me at all, and she began to sob. Her mother came into the room. She was holding a suitcase in one hand and a backpack in the other. She sat them on the couch and sat next to the girl. "Okay, I'm ready to go," the mother said to the girl. The girl looked up and nodded at the mother. As they stood up to leave, a man crashed through the living room. He looked at the 2 bags and then at the mother. He asked her where she thought she was going, and he grabbed the daughter by the shoulders and took a few steps back. The mother stood up and said, "We are leaving you." Tears began to form in her eyes, and she whispered, "You can't hurt her anymore." He yelled at her. "You ain't going anywhere," Warren yelled. He came at the mother and punched her in the face. "You ain't going nowhere." He pulled a gun, aimed it at the mother. The daughter screamed and ran in front of the mother just as the gun went off. The girl fell down dead. "Happy birthday, Alice," was the last thing I heard him say before I woke up. I was so terrified when I woke up, I went into the basement to check on the girls. They were all fine. As I walked back up the stairs, I heard a light voice call out, "Alice." I looked behind me and none of the girls were awake. I shook it off as nothing. Maybe one of the girls talks in her sleep. A few weeks after the party, I was walking down to the basement when I heard a man laughing from upstairs. I was the only one home at the time. So I went upstairs to see if my husband had gotten off work early. But when I went upstairs and no one was there. But when I went upstairs, no one was there. Then I heard a gunshot go off and a scream. I figured it must have come from outside. I ran outside to see what happened, but when I did, nothing was out there. Everything was normal. I was so confused. One of my neighbors was out walking their dog. She saw my confused demeanor and came up to me. "Peggy, is everything all right?" She hadn't heard the gunshot. "Oh, I just thought I took out the trash cans already." "I guess not," I lied. The last thing I wanted was for people to think I was crazy or something. Mike had picked up Alice from choir practice that night and was home a little late. He saw I was upset and asked me what was wrong. I reluctantly told him about the laughing and the gunshot. He looked concerned and shrugged it off, saying, "Your mind is playing tricks on you when you're alone." Nothing happened for about a month, but one night while I was sleeping, I heard a loud bang coming from the living room, like something had hit the ground. I shot up from my bed and looked at Mike. He was awake too. We went down to the living room to see what had happened. Everything looked normal. Alice came out of her room and asked us why we were banging stuff around so late at night. We didn't know what to say to her. We didn't want her to be scared. She turned to walk away when the lights began to flicker, and we all heard a light female voice murmur, "Alice." She turned around to see if it had been me, and it sounded again, "Alice." Alice's hair began to move as if there was a light breeze next to her ear. She was frozen. She looked at me and Mike and said, "I can feel something breathing on me." Alice began to tremble. Then a voice called out again, this time only it was louder and harsher, "Alice!" I had enough. I grabbed Mike by the hand and ran towards Alice. I grabbed her and my keys, and we all ran out the door. I drove to my sister's house and stayed there. My sister and I stayed up late that night. I told her about the dream and the gunshots and everything, and I told her about the whispering that had just happened. She looked at me with full belief. Carol had always believed in the paranormal. She said to me, "Peg, you really should call a medium or something. If you're being haunted, we should know for sure." I nodded. "You might want to ask the neighbors around, too. They might know something about the history of the house." The next day we went home and went back to our daily lives. Every week I would take the trash out and look to see if any of my neighbors were out so I could ask them about the house. But it seemed like I was on a completely different schedule than them. I could never get a chance to talk to them, but life was moving smoothly there, and we hadn't heard voices or banging in weeks. I finally came across a neighbor, an old lady named Frances Turner. I'd only spoke to her once or twice a year. I went up to her and said hello, then asked her about the history of the house. She looked at me and she said, "Well, it has a rather sad history. There was a small family like yours that lived there about 20 years ago. The husband was an awful drunk, and he abused their poor daughter so badly. She always had on some kind of cast or bandage, just a bruised up poor thing. Well, it was on her 13th birthday that the mother and daughter tried to leave nasty old Warren. That was the husband's name. I froze, remembering my dream. And he just snapped. He tried to shoot his wife, but Alice, the daughter, jumped in front of the bullet." I had to interject. Did you say Alice?" Frances looked concerned for a second. "Oh my, that's your little girl's name, isn't it?" I nodded. "Well, that was the only major thing that ever happened there. Nobody has stayed there for very long after that." I thanked her for telling me, then I went back inside. I was terrified. I sat on the couch. Lights began to flicker again, and I heard the voice again. "Alice, Alice." I heard the gunshot and the scream. Then I saw the girl on the floor. It was as if I was dreaming, but I was fully awake. I could see the bullet holes in her chest and the bruises on her face. Then I felt breathing on my neck. I was so frozen with fear. Then a loud male voice began to laugh and yell, "Happy birthday, Alice!" I ran outside and called my sister. I told her what Frances had told me about what just happened. "You need to call a medium, Peggy." My sister was right. I went on the internet and looked up local mediums and called the closest one. She came to my house that Friday. I had Mark, Carol, and Alice with me. The second she walked into my house, she told me there was a strong young female presence in the house. She told us that her name was Alice and that her father had shot her on her 13th birthday. She also said that she had felt the presence of the father. The medium lit some sage and began to cleanse the house. Since then, the house has been much easier to live in, but every year on Alice's birthday, we hear her name get called out. And we hear laughter. Dun dun dun. Actually, that one's not bad. That one wasn't too cringy. I'm still just, surprised at, oh, this daughter gets, beat up and shot by her husband. If that didn't come directly out of Secret Life of Bees, I don't know what did. Because that's definitely where I got that idea from. Anyway, that was a lot of me talking. My voice is a little hoarse, but yeah. That was a couple scary stories that I personally wrote way back in 2012 when Unusually Horrid first started. So now, if you're new, now you kind of know the history of Unusually Horrid. If you're not new and you were just wondering, now you kind of know the history of Unusually Horrid. But yeah, thanks so much for listening to my scary stories that I wrote a million years ago while I sat and processed my hair. I'm gonna go rinse it out now. You guys have a good day, have a good night, have a good life. Thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and and if you're new here, please subscribe. I would love for you to stick around. I've got lots more plans coming up for you guys this month. I've had plenty of paranormal experiences, and you're going to hear about some of them. So have a good day, have a good night, have a good life. I'm going to go shampoo my hair now. Unusually Horrid out. Okay, bye!